your customers aren't searching for fix AC, install capacitor. They're searching for my carrier 5-SEER unit isn't working. Like, it drives me bonkers to see all these check-ins where they just say install. That's not helping customers find you. It's so incredibly important to describe in detail, if possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home Service Hustle. I'm your host, Jonathan Bannister, and today I'm with Billy Coover, award-winning software engineer, tech guru. He's the CEO of Nearby Now, which is a software that Cornerstone has been using since 2016. I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for being here, Billy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's talk a little, tell everybody what Nearby Now is. You started it, 2011?
Yeah. Kind of before that, we were, let me go to the whole backstory if we got time. So go all the way back to like 2005-ish. My boss at the time, I had been working in the financial services industry, and my boss at the time was building a house, and he was the subcontractor himself. So he had all these trades come in, and he was finding all these gaps in how they were operating. And one of the things that he was really focused on was the guys that were coming in and doing the window treatments. He noticed how much of a kind of a pain in the ass it was to get the measurements right. And so he had this idea, like, what if we could take a phone, like a smart device, and laser measure and have the measurements right on the device itself. And that way, they could probably do an entire house and measure every window in a fraction of the time. So he kind of set out to try to do that, right? Well, 2005, there's no iPhone back then, right? So he might have even started this in 2003. Kind of gave up on it because the technology wasn't there. Started it again in 2005, technology wasn't there. So the iPhone, I think, launched in 2007.
Yeah.
And he approached me about it. And at the time, the very first version, you couldn't develop apps for it, right? It was just like any other phone, it was just kind of cooler. And so what we had at the time, do you remember those Palm Pilots? You had a little stylus, and you could actually, it was prior to the iPhone. That was like the top phone, right? And you could actually code for that. So I started to code this solution, and holy cow, it was such a horrible experience. I mean, I just couldn't get it. I couldn't, and the tooling behind attaching devices and getting the laser onto the wall, it just wasn't there, So we kind of gave up on it. After the iPhone came out, we started to hear that they were going to create like a developer environment, and you're going to actually be able to write apps in new modern programming languages. And so we kind of started to go down this route, and we pivoted because we kept thinking, man, this is a cool feature of probably a bigger application. So we were thinking like a dispatch system, what you would think of today as Service Titan. Okay. So we started to build that. We call it Sidebox. Sidebox being, the box on the truck, a toolbox to help the home service trades operate their business more efficiently. That was the goal. And so we started to build that. We started to build, dispatching features. We had some really cool stuff we did. And we kind of pivoted again into marketing, helping contractors market their business, getting found online, how to get Google to know who you are, right? Everything was going search, everything was going mobile. And so we were trying to figure out, how can we help, because this is where the money's at. How do you help a client get more business? And so back in my other career, I had been working heavily with what they call VoIP, voice over IP. So, I built our company's virtual phone tree system. And so Twilio came out, and Barry was my boss / business partner, decided to enter into one of their developer contests, because we had actually started building these marketing pages for contractors. So what it would do is you would sign up for Sidebox, you would enter your business info, and we were creating really cool phone and text message enabled landing pages that the home service pros could track. So, run your marketing campaigns, run your Google ads, run your Facebook ads, and our marketing platform would help you track to see which was working. We built in like A/B testing and all that. And then we had call tracking, and the call tracking stuff was cool because, and this was through Twilio. We were very, very early adopter of Twilio. Call tracking was cool because you could have our product up and you could answer calls directly through the web browser. It only worked on Chrome, but I mean, that was kind of, at the time, it was like, what? All you needed was, like a USB headset, and you could take calls and record them right from your browser. You didn't need a dedicated phone system. You didn't need a phone line at all. It just came right through the browser. Not only that, based on the number that was calling in, we were doing this cool like real-time lookup. So we would prompt you on the screen. It'd pop up like a bubble, like, hey, Jonathan Bannister's calling, who's a customer of yours. In one click, it would open the customer info, and it is really cool stuff. And so Twilio reached out and they're like, hey, we're doing this developer contest. You should put this product in there that we were working on, this call tracking stuff. And so we put that in there, and we won this developer contest.
Nice.
And that was pretty cool because they gave us Mac laptops as a reward, which is, those aren't cheap, right? Yeah. 2 of them, right? Because it was us together. And then they invited us to their first annual developer conference that was in San Francisco. So Barry and I, we were both Arizona based. So Barry's native Texan. He's from Corpus Christi area.
Okay.
And but had lived in Arizona, Mesa, Arizona for 15 years. Anyway, so Barry and I decided to take Sidebox on the road to San Francisco and enter into this developer contest. Well, then they reached out and said, hey, we're doing this hackathon. Here's the rules. You can start the day of, you don't have to be actually in San Francisco at the conference, but the day of the conference, you can start. And then we're pulling an all-nighter. And then, I don't remember if it was a one all-nighter or 2 all-nighters, but at the end of the conference, they would evaluate everyone's product idea and, award a winner. And so we book our flights, and we're sitting in Sky Harbor. That's the airport in Phoenix, coming up with ideas. And we came up with the idea of Nearby Now. And the original idea was the way we describe it as homeowners kind of shooting a flare in the sky saying, I need help. My water heater just busted. And they would be able to see in real time every plumber within 30 miles of them, and could, through this interactive map, interact with these plumbers. And so the idea of Nearby Now kind of spawned from that. And actually, there was a company doing this back then. Home Depot bought them. I don't remember the name of the company. It was like Red Line. I forget the name, but there was other companies kind of doing this too. Thumbtack comes to mind, but not in this real-time interactive geolocated way, right? And so we took this idea and we built it. And I'm telling you, man, I don't think I slept for 48 hours. I probably had 23 Red Bulls. I mean, we cranked this shit out. And at the end, this sucks. At the end, you had to demo what you built, right?
Right.
And I remember, not every there was 250 developers there. So you can't do that many demos, right? So what would happen is you would submit what you built, and then I think they did like the top 10 would get to demo. And so we passed that bar and we got to demo. I'll never forget. I'm walking up on stage to do the demo, and I trip and I fall on my face in front of all these people in San Francisco, and it was mortifying. I was like, I mean, I'm already nervous as shit, right? I was young. I was in my 20s, and it sucked. And anyway, we did the demo, and we ended up winning the damn thing. We won the hackathon, and so Barry and I were like, so we just took on 250 of probably the world's best entrepreneurs, software engineers, and we won. And then Twilio talked to us later and said, hey, listen, we really think the product you built has legs. You should pursue it. And so we're like, all right, let's do this. So we applied for like, you ever heard of like Techstars?
Yeah.
Techstars is kind of like, what's the other one? The one that, Y Combinator. These like incubators, right? Startup incubators. So we applied to these, and they all blew us off. They thought it was crap. So we decided to quit our day jobs and do this full time. And it was crazy. It was a year of building out Nearby Now, making no money, living off savings. And keep in mind, he's got 2 kids. I have 3. And I mean, it was terrifying, right? Like I gave up a 6-figure awesome job. I walked away from it. He was making probably 3 times that. And, all for this idea, and all because we had been building software together, and we were winning awards with this company that we were working for. And I mean, year after year, they have these industry awards in the financial services sector, and we were building new products, like products that never existed before. We would build them as our team, and they would win industry awards. And so the company that we were working for, they were crushing it, right?
Yeah.
And we were not reaping the benefit of how awesome we were doing, right? We got our salaries. I mean, the salary is nothing to sneeze at, but we were going above and beyond time and time again. And, we were getting little attaboys, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of the last products we built before we left, took 4 guys and off-site to a hotel conference room for 2 months, and we built this product from scratch. And I remember once we went live, the sales team, I think, sold it to like 4 customers instantly. But this was like $100,000 a year kind of software, So they immediately sold, and these are recurring contracts, right? So it's like 1 year, $100,000 commit, and they sold 4 or 5 like right away. And I'm like, we just invented $500,000 in perpetuity, right? Because it's going to keep going and going. And so we're like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we making these other people rich? We want to be rich, right? And so that was kind of the motivation to leave our cush jobs and take a stab at doing this by ourselves. And honestly, we kind of failed. Like we spent a year on Nearby Now, and I think after the first year, it was making, I don't know, $800 a month, nothing. So we had to quit. And Barry, he left. He moved back to Texas. He moved to Austin and got was doing contracting jobs, and I started working and this kind of is a segue into the AI stuff. So I started working for a company out of Santa Monica, and it was brutal. I hated it. I loved what we were doing, but so remember I said we had kids. Well, I had small kids. I think at the time 3, 5, and 7, right? So I was having to fly to Santa Monica from Arizona every other week, staying a week at a time, right? So that was brutal on my family, and I hated doing it, but I had to make money, right? And the pay was really good. And startup pay was more than I was making in my corporate job as a, I was leading a team of developers, being paid very well, but the startup was paying even better. And there's equity involved and stuff like that, and so hated it, but needed the money, and it was crazy because the co-founders of that company, they were kids. It's the first time I ever had a job where I was the old guy, right? And I'm not even like 30. I'm like barely 30 at the time, right? But these kids are like 22. 22, and someone gave them $4 million for this business idea. So that was a struggle actually for me because, I had a decade of experience. I knew how businesses operate, especially on the financial side, right? Because I was writing software in the financial services industry. So I felt like I knew a lot. And here these kids were, and they're funded and they have no fear. And they would change shit all the time. It would just drive me bonkers because I was very rigid and structured. And my goal was like, hey, we need to make money. And they're like, have you ever seen that show? God, that show that was about the startup community oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, but they're making fun of VCs basically in this show, and we could put a link to the show notes about it. I'm an idiot for not remembering what this show's called, but anyway, it's very much like the show, right? Like these kids, they're like, we don't need to make money. What?
You just raise money.
Yeah, no, it's like, no, we need to build the product, and we need customers. I'm like, yeah, so let's charge them. No, we're not going to charge our customers. Not yet. It's famous in the episode, one of the episodes, we're pre-revenue. Like, what the hell is pre-revenue?
Yeah.
So it was hard for me, but I was new to the startup world, specifically the VC startup world, where they were right and I was wrong. In the beginning, that kind of startup, you're not trying to make money. You're trying to go from 0 to 100,000 customers. And it doesn't matter if you make $0 in the process, right? They're looking for hats, people. They want users. So anyway, I was doing that, and it was taking a toll on me. The flying, the being away from the family, and by the way, I was the lead software engineer, and I was writing programming in a language I didn't even know yet. I was just learning on the fly and going, and I'll tell you a little bit later what that software was, because it's really cool and it segues into AI. But so while this was happening, every month, and I think I worked for like 8 to 10 months, I was with them every month. By the way, Nearby Now was still going. Okay. But it was on autopilot. Every month it was making more and more and more. And we weren't doing any advertising. It was just word of mouth. Customers were using it. Customers were finding it from their competitors. And it got to the point where about 8 to 10 months in, Nearby Now all of a sudden was making like $8,000 a month. And I was like, man, $8,000 a month. I could live off that. I could work on this full time, get me out of this nightmare of traveling to Santa Monica every week. And I think I could try to blow this up a little bit. And so I called Barry. I said, Barry, hey, because we're 50-50 partners on this. I'm like, hey, would you be willing to invest the 50% back to me pay me a salary to so I can just, I got 3 kids, I got to pay bills. Let me blow this up. And he's like, without hesitation, can we cuss on here?
Absolutely.
Without hesitation, he's like, fuck yeah. So, and at the time I thought I was asking a lot, because it's like, $8,000, we're splitting that 2 ways, $4,000 a month. The cost of operating Nearby Now when it didn't have a whole lot of customers was almost zero, right? I mean, we had become like cloud experts. I knew how to build infrastructure at extremely low cost. So, when we were making $8,000 a month, that was almost all profit. And so I'm asking him to give $4,000 a month to me. That's his. And I thought it was a huge deal. And he didn't even hesitate. He's like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And so he let me go. And within 3 months, I turned it from 8K to 40K. And we just kind of had like this, oh shit, like there's something here. And
hold on, I want to stop you 1 second. I want to ask something. So I think that this is a good talking point here. So you talked about how when y'all quit your jobs the first time and you did this, and then obviously you had to go through that rough moment and go back and get jobs, both of y'all. Kind of talk about like business is fucking hard. Like running a business is hard. And you said like you thought you knew business and you definitely knew finance because of working on the software and stuff. But like, think about where you were then when you first quit that first job and where you are today. Like when you say you knew business, like, can you probably agree that you didn't, know half of what you thought you did know?
I'll tell you what I knew was corporate red tape.
Right.
I didn't know shit about, oh my gosh, there's so much to running your own business.
Right.
I mean, forget about the software side. You've got taxes, you've got employees, and it doesn't matter if you got 1099s or W2s. It's worse if you have W2s, not worse, harder if you have W2s, because then you've got a whole separate component of what you're going to do. But then, okay, so in the corporate world, you're in constant like conflict with other departments. Every department has their own set of goals, and you're always competing for stuff, for bandwidth, basically. In the startup world, where you're funded, it's a lot different in that the whole idea of funding is, and people should understand this, they're giving you other people's money with the sole goal of just spending 110% of your time building out the software and getting customers. That's all that matters. Nothing else matters. And so it's kind of like for someone who's spent their entire career understanding how money works and the flow of money. And it was such a foreign concept to me where, it's like, wait a minute. Or I don't know what this company raised. I think they raised like 2.5 million. They're giving you 2.5 million and you owe this money back. Like I was really confused. Like nobody gives people money just because, right?
Right.
And so, it was later on I learned like, okay, this is how equity works. And you're selling your soul really, because when you get funded through a startup, typically, unless you're Elon Musk, typically you are at the mercy of the board. The board dictates all. And that really sucks as an entrepreneur because, you have your own vision and your own desires and your own goals. And this is the thing I love about not just Nearby Now, but being an entrepreneur versus working in the corporate world is, see, in the corporate world, no matter what level you're at, you answer to somebody above you, right? And in some cases that might be like just a manager. We used to joke like, when I was kind of just a regular software engineer, I have 15 bosses, right? Because I have a boss who has 3 bosses, who has 5 directors, who has 7 VPs, who has a C, and all of them can dictate things to you. And it sucks. Whereas now, my only boss are my customers. No, well, my wife, yeah, but my customers, right? I only answer to my customers, and I love that. I love it because my customers dictate a lot about the shape of how we do things, and so I don't say yes to every customer, right? And a customer can't fire me per se, right?
Right.
They can not use my service, but um, it's great because the customer has problems, and the whole idea is what we're doing is trying to solve these problems. So I love that. I love being able to say, okay, customer, what problems are you having? Um, Let me solve it, and that's it. And so and there's value to that, right? And that's why customers pay you for the product or service you're creating, because you're solving problems for them. I love that. And so when I moved into the startup space, I just didn't understand in the beginning. I understand clearly now, but in the beginning, I was just like, how we're gonna our burn rate was like $100,000 a month, and I was like, what do we do? We're gonna run out of money in a year, right? Oh yeah, like you said. Oh yeah, well, we'll just raise more, and it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, how do we sustain this long term? And they kept saying like, look, it's not about the money. They're taking care of us. And in hindsight, it makes sense, right? Because I've actually invested in companies in this way. And so the whole idea is you take a young kid like I was, and you want to give them enough money where they're not stressing about money, especially if they're young and they have a family. You got to pay them really well and say, we've got you. We're going to take care of you. Blow this thing up. Because then you get rewarded again, right? Because
Right.
if there's some kind of exit, and I've been a part of an exit, and it is rewarding. But the whole goal is like, I'm giving you this money so that you can focus, is the best way to put it. And so then when you transition from that to running your own business, where you're paying your own bills and you're writing your own tax checks, and you're responsible for your you have to respond to your customers, and your the customers are putting a lot of trust into you, and it's just a different world, and I love it. I think it's so much better, but it was hard, really hard, especially when when we were first starting out. Nearby Now's core was based on Google search. And I mean, anyone that's been in search for a long time knows the pain that Google can inflict on you with any kind of update they do. In fact, we had some good kind of friends / business partners of ours. Man, they were doing like 20 million a year in revenue, and Google, one of those Google updates, Penguin, Panda, whatever, they went from 20 million to zero almost overnight. And these guys are smart, very, very smart guys. And they tried and tried and tried to do everything in their power to adjust to the change that Google had made. And they couldn't do it. So, I mean, imagine that. I mean, how does that feel when you've got this business, and they had been going for a while, a few years, making enormous amounts of money. They had it was like the epitome of what I thought a bootstrap startup should be. They had a small office that was like super modern. You could bring your dogs to work. Everyone's in flip-flops. They brought in coffee. They brought in food. Lots of games. It was very family oriented. They wanted everyone to really be comfortable, and no suits, just like how I'm dressed, just like how you're dressed.
Yeah.
Comfort is everything. And they built a winning product. They did. And then overnight, Google took it from them. And so that was, that kept me up at night, because I'm like, shit. I mean, the core of what Nearby Now was doing at the time is based on Google. And what if, Google's notorious. I mean, all these big companies are. Amazon, Google, Apple, they're notorious for taking people's ideas and building them into the products directly. And, entrepreneur be damned. They don't care.
There's a dispatch software in our space that does the same exact thing. So
there is, and so
won't say names, but they do the same exact thing.
Yeah,
but you asked the question just now, like could you imagine that, talking about, overnight your business.
They have a logo kind of like this.
I think you and I could do a podcast and interview. We would never run out of guests of people who lost their business overnight. And that would be, 2020, our government did it to us, right? So Google can do it. The government can do it. I mean, literally it's a scary thing to think about. And we're watching the Google results right now with this latest EEAT. And there's some big people in the market space that have always had amazing SEO over the years, not clients of ours, just stuff we're watching, these big $80-100 million companies, and just traffic is dropping by 50,000 users a month. And it's because, people just aren't on top of some of these updates, and it's hard.
You may never be. It might be a permanent thing that you can't recover from, like our friends. And in fact, they could still be trying today, a decade later, and it would have been futile. I think they spent way too much time trying to get. I mean, I think I probably would too if I lost $20 million annually. I would do everything in my power to try to figure out how to get that back. But if they spent a decade trying, they still would not, because what they were doing before, it's gone forever. It'll never be a thing again on Google. And so
let's talk about, we said with the business being hard, right? Business is hard. You've learned a lot. The story you were telling me really made me think, because I know so many of our clients in the home service space, I've asked them their stories, like, how'd you get started? And not always, but a large percentage of the people were technicians at one time and said, man, I'm working for the man, and I'm making.
Well, they said what I said. I'm tired of making other people rich.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what, when you were saying that, I was like, oh, I've heard the same story. Just instead of a software engineer, it was a technician or a plumber, right? But it's not always that simple. And I know so many of them who went into business herself, and now they're back working for someone. It's not for everyone, and it is hard. And there's a lot, like, people just think, oh, you own a business, you drive a nice car, you live this easy life, you got a nice house, and it's because you got all these people doing all the work for you. And that's not the case. No. Matter of fact, my producer who you met, who's backstage, like, she told me just a week or two ago at my office, I came out and she could, she's like Donna from Suits. Like, she could hear everything. One, she says my voice projects. So, but I come walking out and she's like, I don't envy you at all. Right. Anyway, she just heard me on a stressful call, and it's like, but people don't see that side of owning a business. And I love you being vulnerable here and transparent, that like you left and went back and worked a job in Santa Monica and being away from your family, and you didn't enjoy that, but maybe that drove you and made you, ask your partner, like, can I take all the money so we can work on this? But some people will give up. It's a slap in the face, but I also think it's not. Some people should have given up, because I just don't know if entrepreneurship is for every person,
You got to understand that, if you're a technician, let's say that you're a, HVAC technician, and you've spent a decade installing carrier units, and you're badass at what you do. Maybe you're really, really good at upsales or selling service plans. And that's great. But when you decide to go into business for yourself, you need to understand that, you're no longer a service technician. You no longer are wearing that hat. You're wearing 25 different hats that you may have never worn before. I didn't go to school to be an accountant. In fact, I have a computer science degree. I didn't get my computer science degree until after I was well established in my software engineering career. So I was wearing hats that I was not prepared to wear. I figured it out, but that's the thing is, there's a lot, and especially if you have employees, like that dynamic, because employees are people, right? Every person has a life, they have a story, they have problems, and you've got to be involved in that. And so, you know, you got customers, you've got employees, you've got your own family, and then really importantly, you cannot forget about your own personal life, right?
Mm.
When we first built Nearby Now, I mean, I was working 80 hours a week on it, and I was so afraid of getting burnt out. And I think I might have started to get burnt out that first year, mostly because we weren't making money. But um, I mean, it paid off in the end. But that's one of the important things that I think is easily forgotten is you've got to have a life outside of business, um, a hobby, friends. You've got to be able to download all your problems and share, spread that pain around a little bit, because if you keep it all bottled up inside, you're not, it's going to make what you do even harder. So, and the reason why I think it's important to, and this is why it's been so great to have Crystal with me along the way, is because I don't have to go very far to decompress and download. I just tell her. But you need this outlet, because there's some things you cannot tell your employees. You don't want to scare them. You don't want to upset them. You don't want to piss them off. And so you got to have an outlet. And then I think it's also good to have, what do you call it? Like mentors. Barry's kind of always been mine, and I've had a couple others, but you know, if you can find friends, family, someone else in the industry that kind of has been through a little bit of what you've been through, huge resource for you to help guide you and belay some fears you might have. But yeah, you have to realize, like, you know, if you're a landscaper and you've been mowing lawns and you're the best lawnmower in San Antonio, and you know, you think you can kick your competition's ass, so and your boss pissed you off and you're like, screw him, I'm going to start my own landscaping company. Wow. Do you know how to get customers from scratch? Do you know how to build them? What do you do when they don't pay you? What do you do when your employee steals a lawnmower from you? So, I mean,
I think the pricing's the biggest one that I think people miss. You know, they don't know how to price based off of their margins and their overhead and stuff. So they start asking, well, what do you charge for this? What do you charge? And it's like, well, you're asking a company that's got, you know, 5 employees to 200 employees, like their pricing is going to be completely different. And which it better be, right?
You see this a lot in the 7-figure group, where that's probably the most common question I see on there is, you know, these young entrepreneurs that are starting their agencies, and they're you know, how do you price this? How do you price that? Because they don't know, right? They're new to this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, depending on what it is, you know, it's been a race to the bottom. And so you have to be careful what you get into. So for example, if you're just in the lawn mowing example, you know, like you said, you knew your boss was charging this guy $250 every 2 weeks for you and this crew of 3 to go do this house. Like my landscapers, I think every other Friday for, I think $250 a visit. We're on 6.5 acres. It's not 6.5 acres of landscaping, but it's a lot of landscaping. And so, you know, we pay a little bit of a premium compared to when I was living in Arizona. You know, we had a 1 acre house with half of that being landscaping. So it was a lot cheaper. But if you go into it and say, okay, well, you know, I know my boss is charging this, and then you say, okay, so I'm going to charge 100, right? I want to undercut them. Well, if it's just you by yourself and it takes you 4 hours, whereas a crew of 5 might be able to get it done in 45 minutes, So now what have you done to yourself? You're now probably making less. In fact, you're making less than when you were an employee, right? Because, 4 hours, $100, that's $25 an hour, right? And then you got to factor in, is your industry regulated? Are there business licenses? What about your insurance? Do you have to be licensed, bonded, and insured? Your vehicle insurance, your gas powered tools. I mean, there's a lot more than just, oh, my boss was charging this guy $250 every 2 weeks, so I'll undercut that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people make that mistake.
Oh, of course they do. But I think what you just said, all those things you just named there are definitely in the statistics of why, small businesses, like it's like 40 or 60%, don't make it past year one. And then like year 3 and 5. And then it's literally next to none make it past 10 years. And I think it's because I feel like a lot of businesses, they know nothing, right? So you take a technician that has no clue, they say the undercutting story there. Well, that business model is not going to work. Like, because all those things you just said and mentioned, like they probably don't have certain insurances and things, or one piece of equipment gets stolen, or one person gets hurt on the job and they can't, pay for that damage that's taking place. So I think that's why a lot, it could be restaurants, it could be whatever you want to look at, but they don't know how to get customers. They don't know how to, train the right, people to be able to sell whatever product or service that they're offering. So if you can't bring in customers and sell them and retain your customers, you're going to struggle there. But I think the reason why the ones don't make it past, to the 10-year goal is because over time, I think you can have a halfway decent business mindset with the right product or service, and you can take it to a certain place. But if you don't continue to perfect your processes and systems and continuously update and change your processes and systems, like you're going to break it, or you're going to plateau, and it's going to be too hard. I think, and it kind of goes back to some of those startups, and you're taking some of that VC money that where you don't have that control. You have other people making those, they want customers, they want money, they want to get paid back the investment they put in.
They have a specific horizon they're looking for on a return, and if the writing's on the wall that you're not going to get there, you're done. They don't care about you.
So you're a software engineer. So let's bring that into business and our world. So there's a large dispatch software company out there. I personally feel that that's what has taken place there, that there's been so much funding, and they're leaning, there's so many people making decisions on just bring on new customers, where I think there's major flaws in the software. I get frustrated with my own clients. Like we're having to go in and reconfigure reports and the way things put in. And I think that there should have been I'm not a software engineer, but I think there should have been a version 2 started years ago, because I think there's a lot of things that are outdated and broken that cannot be fixed at this point. So yeah, I'd love to hear
we call that, they've got a lot of, in the industry, we call that technical debt.
Okay.
And so what happens is you kind of get siloed or boxed in. So when you create your product, you have a vision, and you kind of you build it, and sometimes it can be very rigid around that idea. And as you grow and expand, if you're not able to expand in like a fluid way, you end up with this kind of technical debt. In fact, the company you're talking about, the whole idea behind that company was because their predecessors were doing the same thing. They were stuck in the same rut where they built software, and it was too rigid, and it wasn't able to adapt to what the industry was doing, to the needs of the industry. And it was developed, those platforms were developed before the cloud, right? A lot of them you'd have to install them actually on like a computer instead of it being browser based, or they were built before there were apps, right?
Right.
So the whole idea behind this company you're talking about was, yeah. So there's all these things that these other platforms don't do. Let's do it. Let's fix it. Let's build it. And so I would say that they did that. I think they accomplished that goal. It's what they have is so much better than what came before it. But now they're stuck in that same problem, which is the industry, everything's always fluid. Nothing really stays static forever. And so you've got to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to change, and you've got to, it's hard. I'll give you one thing that drives me crazy about them. So we process millions of webhooks from them every month. Okay. So every time a job's completed on this dispatch software, they send a webhook to our servers, and we ingest it and process it. And so very early on, we were one of the first companies that did this, partnered with them very early on. And they actually knew about me. I met them at a conference, and they were like, yeah, we knew you were building a dispatch system. And so we had our eye on you. We were watching you because, we knew we were going to compete with you. And I'm like, part of me is like, shit, I should have stayed in the dispatch space because they are making so much money. It's crazy. But I would never want to be them. I'd never want their amount of stress. Right. So anyway, we get a job's completed, and we take that information. We actually turn it into like a review request as one example. So they send us a job where the phone number is billy@gmail.com. And it's like, okay, so this is 10 years ago. All right. So very early on, you didn't have any kind of scrubbing of your form fields when your customers are entering data. Okay, fine. And we would put in tickets for this. Hey, come on. And so here we are. And it's probably 10 years later. Still get that today. Like, and so I finally sent an email to kind of a senior level IT person over there and said, what the hell is going on? I mean, because what happens is with garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're giving me garbage, I can't do what I need to do for my customer. And the answer was basically, we're really sorry. We built this platform, this specific area 10 years ago, and it didn't have any rigor around what, everything was loosely typed. A phone number was not a phone number. An email was not an email. It was just kind of open form fields. And all I'm thinking in my mind is I could solve that problem in 20 minutes. I could just write a program that would go back through all that data, fix it, scrub it, and move it, and done deal. Why aren't they doing that? Now, I'm oversimplifying that, right? Because they've probably got massive amount of data, but it doesn't matter. Like that's a very simple example of how unflexible they are. And
but is that because of the investors? Is that what happens? Like that's so that will not equate to more revenue in their eyes, like new customer revenue.
That's correct. Yeah.
But the investors only care about new revenue.
That could be part of it, right? So, they're going to have a whole IT division, right? And who knows how many IT people they have, but like at my last company, we had like 20 software engineers and like 5 database folks and like 5 network engineers. So like 30 people in IT. This is kind of a big IT group. And regardless, and bootstrapped, right? The guy was he was the CEO, owner, president, was funded this on his own. No outside investment. That shit wouldn't fly. He would hold everyone there through the weekend and say, fix this. So I think in the startup world, it's a little different, right? Like you said, that's what I'm describing as a minor inconvenience and annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
But that shit stacks up
all
the time. And so what you end up with, and here's what they're notorious for, and I think a lot of companies in the startup space are like this that are funded. they're really, really, and you can tell a lot of their money goes to this. They're really good at sales, like the best at sales. I mean, anytime you convince a company to give you $20,000+ a year annually, paid for upfront, non-refundable, you're a badass at sales,
Yeah.
right? Like that. And they're able to do it with even these small one to five truck companies. I mean, I think, I don't know if they do that now still, but I remember at one point, they were actually turning away, if you weren't doing like 2 million in revenue or something like that there. But again, and then what was happening with the customers is they get onboarded, and then all that awesome sales experience, it's just shit after that. Customer service sucks. The product was oversold. It doesn't do exactly all the things that they were told. Or, if you want these other things, this upsales here and there. And but here's this is how they became so big, I think, is killer sales with a lot of money behind that. And then they didn't have any direct competitors, because all their competitors at the time were stuck with their old platforms.
Yeah.
And so they were able to get away with subpar customer service and subpar product, because even though the product, you and I are calling it subpar, it's still better than anything else.
Well, look, I think anytime you can have a product or a service, a platform that big, and there's not a bolt-on feature, like I'm not talking about a bells and whistle that enhances a product or service and they can make a lot of money on the side from it. I'm all kudos for that. But anytime you can have companies that can make a lot of money off of like reporting as a third party, because your dashboard is never accurate, you got a fucking problem, period. Yes. No matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
And that's what's frustrating us. I mean, like we recently had a client that did $1 million like back in March or May. And their dashboard said they made like 370,000. I mean, it's like, it's not even in the ballpark of being accurate. And that's frustrating,
You would think that that's kind of the core of what a dispatch system should be doing, is allowing you to calculate revenue, expenses, inventory management. I mean, this is core shit, right? Like, I can't imagine building a dispatch system that couldn't tell. I mean, the only exception to that would be is if you're not running 100% of your business through the software. And, maybe that's the case for some. It's similar to, like, let's say you run a business where you're selling on Etsy, Facebook, Shopify. So you've got all these unconnected systems. And so in that scenario, I could see where reporting can be screwed up, hard to derive. But if a company is doing 100% of their jobs through your platform, and everything they do has a price on it, right? So all their service calls, hourly wages, all the upselling. I haven't really been in to see, but I'm assuming they have like a bill of material kind of set up where, if I'm going to install a new HVAC unit, it's going to have a BOM that's maybe 30 line items long, and it's going to total all the way up to $13,000 for the whole thing. That includes labor and materials. And so you take that and you've got 2 techs on the job. And so, how much time, right? Because they're punching in and punching out. And so that's simple shit to be able to calculate what that job actually cost and what the revenue was.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that that's not the case, that blows my mind.
Let's talk about the latest features that y'all come out with on Nearby Now, and then what are some of the new shit that's coming?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that we launched recently that we need to get your folks on. You're not on this yet, but um, so one of the biggest challenges throughout the history of Nearby Now, that all of our agencies face and all of our clients actually face too is getting the technicians to check in.
Okay.
Um, there's a disconnect between what the business owners want and what the technicians actually do. So
Let me tell you a quick story real quick about it. I've had so
sure.
many frustrating conversations over we've been using it since 2016. And I just remember, like, I just got real close with some of our clients over the years. So I just got to where I could just, speak blunt and didn't care at that point, because it is frustrating. They want more reviews. They want a better digital footprint. And I'm like, well, this software will help. Just get your guys to do this. They're already there. They're on location. It takes literally, I've timed it out with a 70-year-old technician. Like, it takes less than 5 seconds. And he was a rock star at getting the most reviews out of this one company, where there was like 30 or 40 techs. He was the oldest guy. He hated technology. I remember when I went and trained it to the whole company the first time, and he was bitching and complaining. He was like, I don't even have a smartphone. I've got a flip phone. He hated me for being there. And he ended up having like 10 times the amount of reviews that everybody else did after a couple of years. Because what he do? He just did what he was asked to do a check-in, ask for a review. And guess what? The customer would do it. It was that whole consistency thing. Like, the numbers worked out. But I remember being in Memphis at a client. I'm sitting in his office, and we're sitting in his office. He had this glass window, and you can see through the warehouse. And I'm talking to him like, why won't you get the guy? Why won't, there's like 2 guys out of your 10 that are doing check-ins and getting reviews. Why? Like, this is going to help your overall business. And I know. And he was like, Jonathan, but how do I get him to do it? And I was like, I looked out the window. I said, you see that guy there? I was like, what's his name? And he told me his name. And I said, so why is he, what is he wearing? What is that? And he was like, what do you mean? That's his uniform. And I'm like, oh, that is your company uniform. And he's got a hat on. I'm like, but why doesn't he have a Memphis Grizzly jersey on right now? Well, he's not allowed to do that. I'm like, whoa, that's a shocker. So he's doing a company policy or rule.
Right.
But I said, if you enforce this to say you have to go and do this check-in, it's no different than you checking in the dispatch software and getting the information, or calling back to if you want to do the old school way and getting your information from the dispatcher. But if you make it a policy and say, like, if I'll reward you if you get positive reviews, but if you don't do the check-in, it's the same thing as if you decide to wear a jersey to work. Yeah, I mean, he looked at me like I had 12 heads. And I was just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if you care about your business that much, you will do something about
it. I think it's really easy for you and me to just say, hey, do this or you're fucking fired.
Yeah, right? They go, well, we can't find help. I'm like, that's such
bullshit. Well, and well, I kind of agree with them post 2020. It's a different world, right? But yeah. So, we've seen the most success when you bring in competition into the realm, right? So if you make your technicians compete with each other over, who can do the most check-ins or who can get the most reviews. If your culture is a culture of competitiveness, holy cow, they thrive in that environment. They really do. And so we try to do that. We try to teach that. But technology wise, and I'm always trying to figure out how can I solve this with code, with software. Because at the end of the day, humans are going to be humans, and there's a lot of things that you might just, like I said, you and I can say you're fired if you don't do this, but not everyone can do that or is willing to do that. And so one of the things that we built was so when they're using our product, our apps on their phone, we kind of using a form of AI. It's called machine learning. So we're able to kind of tell throughout the day. Well, we know for certain when they're on the move. And in fact, I can tell you what they're doing when they're on the move to a certain extent. So If they have my app on their phone, I can tell you, okay, he's walking. All right, she is driving, and I can tell you how fast she's driving. She's going
This is
50 miles.
one of the new features you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we've been able to do with our with this machine learning is now I can tell, okay, so technicians out in the field working, they're driving, and based on certain behaviors they're doing, I can tell with a reasonable degree of certainty when it looks like they're at a new job site. And what we have now is we will send them a little push notification after they've been on the job site for, let's say, 15, 20 minutes. And you can control this. Say, hey, looks like you're at a new job site. Don't forget to check in. Or even cooler is if they've taken a picture in that window where we know we kind of think they're at the job site, and they take that picture, when we send them a push notification and say, hey, looks like you just took a picture on a job site. Do you want to create a check-in with us? And it shows the picture in the little push notification. One tap, it creates like the check-in's ready for them, right? And we try to make this
sketchy, huh?
Yeah, well, we try to we don't actually look at the picture until they post it.
Oh.
Yeah, you got to be a little careful, especially you go home to see the wife for lunch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So no, but we to a certain degree, we can kind of distinguish between did they stop and get gas, or they at a job site. Really cool. And so that's out there now. We always publish these features to Nearby Now first, because I use Nearby Now as the guinea pig. Fix all the bugs, and so we'll have to talk later because it's ready to go for you.
Okay,
it's really cool stuff. But on top of that is we've also automated that, and so automated the check-ins. So same concept, but when we detect that they are at a job site, we can pre-develop a check-in for them. And kind of in the early stages, it's just going to be like an aerial photo, satellite photo of the location, and a check-in message that is kind of a chat GPT style of, hey, this is what I'm doing at this job site. And of course, they'll be able to go back and edit it and refine it. And
how important is that, Billy? That part of fixed AC compared to, repaired an air conditioning system for a family in Arlington, Texas?
It's massively important. It is the most important thing out of what our product does. Because you got to remember, the easiest way to think about it is, what are people searching for? Your customers aren't searching for fix AC.
Right.
They're not searching for install capacitor. They're searching for my XYZ capacitor's busted. My train hot water heater burst. My carrier 5-SEER unit isn't working. Like, they're searching for more long tail stuff, right? It drives me bonkers to see all these check-ins where they just say install. I mean, you're leaving so much equity, SEO equity, search equity on the table when you do that, because that's not helping Google index you. That's not helping customers find you, right? So it's so incredibly important to describe in detail, if possible. And it's so much easier now with Siri and Google Assistant.
Yeah.
You don't even have to type it in anymore. Just and people kind of fixate on spelling. Forget that. Google and these being the modern search engines, they understand spelling mistakes. So I always say this: describe why you're there. Describe what problem did you encounter while you were there? Describe what the solution was, and then describe any parts, colors, manufacturer information if possible. So, like I just had a new HVAC unit installed, and there's some really cool shit now. Like up in the attic, in the air handler, they've got this like UV light now. I don't know if it's a gimmick or not, but cool, really cool. Describe, why did you put that in? Describe it in detail, because people are going to search for that. What's the first thing I search for when my HVAC guy pitched that on me? I searched for whatever that was called, XYZ UV light in the air handler. Does this work? Right? So if you want to capture that kind of traffic, you have to talk about your jobs in the way that people are going to search for that. So it's incredibly important to talk in great detail about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're fixing, and then
where you're at.
That's all part of it. That's all automatic. You don't even have to worry about that. You might want to.
What I'm saying in the description, like
where it's at, and then pictures and videos.
Okay.
And then that kind of we all, since 2010, we've been calling this Google food. This is what Google wants, and we've been validated every year. Every time Google makes a change, more and more, we've been validated about what we've been saying for the last 10 years. This is helpful content. This is what Google wants. This is way more valuable than having someone write a story about San Antonio that is just based on Wikipedia articles, and you're just, it's like a guest blog post, and you're just filling words on a page, right? Because what you're doing instead is you're talking about real-time location. You're talking about real-time jobs. You're talking about customers in real time. Your work, this is the work we're doing. Yep. This actually happened right now. Google loves this. This is the information Google wants.
No, 100%. And I've been preaching this for years, because it's like, I like to describe it when someone doesn't understand. I go, think of it as mini blogs on your website for that specific city, over and over and over and over, depending on how busy you are. And it's like, the more authentic, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's relevant
content, the more often the crawler is going to come crawl your site, right? So it's like you said, that one article that you're talking about San Antonio, you got a bunch of stuff, keywords in there. Like, it's only going to get so much activity. But if you have 100 check-ins for the month for your San Antonio page with the location, these images that Google can read, you've got these real good descriptions of the jobs that you're doing. You've got these first-party reviews that are being stored on that page. If they didn't go to Google, like, that's the kind of stuff that it gets a ton of crawl and activity. And that's what Google wants to see. And they're going to continue to verify and make it better and better and better over time for you. Man, it's like clients over the years will, start off hot, and then they don't hold their teams accountable. And it's super frustrating, because it's like,
right.
For me, on my side of it, and I'm sure you can relate, it's like, you say you care about your business. You say your leads are important. You say, you need to grow, but it's like, this is a key component of it. We've watched it. I've watched some of my, look, I was talking to a client the other day, been with us since probably right around the time we started using you guys. And she was like, like since 2016, I think. And she's like, you know how many reviews we had when we started with you? And I was like, I don't remember. And she was like, I think it was like 18. And she's like,
I can probably tell you.
She's like, you know how many we have now? I was like, over 400. She's like, no, over 800. And I was like, holy shit, And so it was cool to hear that. And, they're here in this Dallas market, and the SEO impact and reach that they've been able to do by doing every job, they have check-ins, and their guys are doing it manually. Because I feel, and that's the reason why I've steered most of my clients away from trying to sync it up through one of the dispatch softwares and pay the extra fee that has to go into that and everything. It's just because I don't like the generic, stamps of the job done, the job description.
Yeah, it and the lack of media attached to that.
Yes.
Same thing, talking about that company again. I've been asking for that since 2012. They have photos in their platform. They don't put them in the API. I don't understand why. I mean, hey, let me give you this stat. You're gonna like this. Okay. So I can't name the client, but so I don't know if you remember, but we developed that feature called intelligent review routing.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, AI, right?
Yeah.
So we are able to. Okay. Do I have time to say this backstory? Are we okay? Can we keep?
Yeah,
going?
we're good.
Okay. So I'm at a industry conference in Vegas. This is like 2016. And this is one of the like Service World, I think. Service World Expo, I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's one of the big ones.
In Phoenix.
And again, well, this one was in Vegas.
Okay. This year's in Phoenix. I saw.
Oh, yeah. So we are, again, no booth, right? Because we can't, but we're just kind of popping around, checking out the booths, visiting our customers. And Barry was there with me because we were meeting with this dispatch company.
Mm-hmm.
Because we wanted them to build an integration with us. And spoiler, they never did. We built it all, but it's been active. So Barry and I are sitting in a bar. It's called like Goose Island, and one of our agency customers calls me, and he says, "Hey, we need this feature," which is basically we're trying. What he's describing is we believe Google reviews are the future, and we want more Google reviews, but we don't want to lose reviews for people that just don't want to leave Google reviews, because there's this industry joke at the time. You'd have to ask 100 people to give you a Google review to get one, right? It was like a 1% close rate. So there's a barrier to entry with Google reviews. You have to have a Google account, right? You cannot leave anonymous Google reviews. You have to have an account. And so if you send someone to Google to leave you a review and they are unwilling or unable to leave you a review, you've lost that opportunity. And that's really sucky, because it's so hard to get a review in general. To have someone that's ready to give you a review, but they won't because they just don't want to bother creating an account, or they just hate Google or whatever.
Yeah.
Man, that's a loss, right? So he's like, can you figure out a way how to get people to Google that will leave a Google review? And so we're sitting in this bar and we just start talking it through, and we could do this. We could do this. I know about this. I could try to figure out how to do this. And we have our laptops, right? So I'm in real time, I'm coding this solution. That ended up becoming IRR, intelligent review routing. So that's what we use. That's what we have that enables us to tell we can figure out the likelihood of a customer leaving a Google review. Okay. And if they do, we send them direct. If we determine there's a high likelihood that this customer will leave you a Google review, we send them right to Google. Otherwise, we send them to the standard review form where they can, leave a Nearby Now review or a Cornerstone Local review, or you can also link out to your preferred review platforms. This blew up. I mean, absolutely insane. So I'll give you this example. This is an extreme example. They're not all like this. So, this is kind of me tooting my own horn here, but we got this company. They're out of Phoenix. They started using IRR February 27th. They had their Google account since 2014. 2014, they got 3 Google reviews. 2015, they got 0. In 2016, they got 3. 2017 is when they signed up for IRR. So 2017, they had 7 Google reviews. Today, they have 3,000.
Wow.
That's a 43,000% increase. It's like,
what do you suggest that set to? I've always been back and forth on, we
Okay.
always set it for most opportunities to get Google reviews, I think.
Yeah, it really depends on what your goal is. I think one of the big problems with agencies in general, and I think incorrectly they've taught a lot of clients this, is you need Google reviews because it impacts your rankings. And so what they've done is they've taken this, what was traditionally known as customer sentiment, and wrapped it around SEO. And so now clients are being trained not to think of reviews as a tool to improve my business, but rather just another SEO signal. And it bothers me because you should be reading every single review you're given, right? Because your customers are the voice of your company. They're the ones that are dictating whether you're good or you suck. So if you're not hearing them, and if you're not adjusting your business model to what your customers are saying about you, you're not a great business. So in my opinion, I want the best of both. I want customers to leave me Google reviews if they're willing. Otherwise, I still want to capture what they have to say, no matter what, because I'm going to read every single review and determine, are my customers happy in general? Not every job goes perfectly, right? There's always going to be some detractors. You can't, no one's perfect. But you need to know, are your techs doing a good job? Are they representing your company well? You need to know, you're going to get price feedback, right? I mean, everyone shops. And so, no one's ever going to say, oh, my $13,000 HVAC unit, what an amazing price.
Yeah.
No one's happy about that. But so you got to use this feedback to make sure that you're responding to the needs of your customer. If you're constantly getting 3, 2, and 1-star reviews, and you're not adjusting, your customers are going to see that, right? Because everyone searches before they make buying decisions now. It's inevitable. So you need to make sure. So, and I think that's what the problem is. So there's confusion about, do I need Google reviews because SEO, or do I need Google reviews because people are making buying decisions based on those reviews? And the answer is really both. Right. You want to capture as many Google reviews as you can, but you better be taking the feedback to heart and making adjustments as you get that feedback.
Well, and here's a news flash here for anyone who doesn't know, is that relevance is super important when it comes to the Google reviews. It's somewhere between 30 and 60 days is what I believe, as far as the algorithm goes for Google Maps, is that like Google doesn't care that you have 8,000 reviews, because really, I mean, they do in a way, but it's kind of like tiered over time, because really for a relevant standpoint, they look at somewhere between 30 and 60 days from a ranking factor perspective. So like if you had 8,000 reviews, but it was 2 years ago, and then you're not getting but like 1 or 2 reviews now, that's why there's times like our clients would go like, how are they outranking us? We've got 1,200 more reviews than they do. And it's like, right. Well, because in the last 60 days, they've had 100 reviews and you've had 7.
Yeah, we call that recency. So right. Again, it goes back to everything we've been saying: real-time, relevant information.
Yep.
Keep feeding. But isn't it absolutely infuriating that we're left wondering what the hell Google's doing?
Of course.
Like, it's maddening. It's in Google's best interest to, generate ad revenue. But
It's everything's always in Google's best interest for Google's best interest.
Right,
So.
right. But you if put the advertising aside,
Okay.
if Google's ultimate goal was returning the highest quality results possible, then we as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, as business owners, need to know specifically, not theoretically, not hypothetically, but specifically and not generically. Google, what do you want? In no uncertain terms. And I don't give a shit that it changes all the time. Just tell me. So tell me for a fact, here's how reviews factor into the algorithm. They're weighed 20% over a search in this time frame from the date that the review, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
if they did that, I think everyone would get better.
But you talk about you being in corporate America and how it works, and that's at like, let's say a tech company that may be 30 million, like, or even if it's $100 million tech company, you said you had 15 bosses. I mean, like these engineers at Google, like how many bosses do they have? Thousands.
It's like a Inception. It's a boss within a boss within a boss.
Yeah, and I also think it's I think Google's probably built and structured kind of like the government is, as far as when there's top secret programs being worked on, like only people don't know every department doesn't know what's going on. They just know what they're supposed to be working on. So I think that's why something comes out and you go, the hell, like why would they make that update and change? And it's like another department's going like, I don't know, why would they make that change? Like, y'all work at Google, like what the hell's the problem here?
Yeah, or they build something so cool and then take it away. Like we were obsessed. They had that product called Wave. Wave. Yeah, we loved it, and they took it away like instantly. It was like, what the hell? So anyway, yeah, I think a lot of people agree with you on that timing, that time frame.
Yeah.
But we just don't know. So to answer your question, there's two options. There's opportunity and conversion. And so if you're getting a good number of Google review, you don't want 1,000 Google reviews a month. I don't believe that, because it doesn't look real. And how I don't have any evidence to support that is outperforming somebody that gets a Google review a day.
But it's always been in my belief that using a system like you've built, that if you were to get 1,000 reviews, like you wouldn't be penalized for it, because there's so much trackability. Like you've got the location stamps, they're picking up on where the reviews being left from. And I tell the clients, like, it doesn't matter if the client you sent them the review link at their house, but then they have to go to the ball game down the road. It's still picking up on the location where a review came from, because it really just wants to make sure that to some extent they can prove that it's the same customer that you sent it to, right? And I just feel like if you were to get an abundant amount of reviews, they're going to reward you for it. But if you do go and get 1,000 bot reviews, and and people do it all the time, like we own thousands of Gmail accounts ourselves over the years. So like you could, and I just think that Google now is smart enough to be able to decipher whether it's real reviews or a fake customer, bot customer, whatever. So
yeah, well, certainly they're using AI, machine learning to try to suss that out, and it really starts with the easiest way to combat that kind of stuff is you tackle it at the entry stage, which is when the Google account's created. So if you go to try to create a Google account today, it's way different than it was 10 years ago, right? And so and then you see this also with the Google business profile and the vetting process they have now. And so there's a lot that you can weed out up front that makes your post processing and your AI tooling smarter and more reliable. Here's another feature that I think you guys might be using now. and I just love this feature. So what we've seen, more and more businesses are opening multiple Google business profile locations. And so it used to be in Nearby Now that we had a one-to-one relationship with Google business locations. So say you open 5 Google business locations, you would need 5 Nearby Now accounts. And it's a pain in the ass. And we try to, we were discounting the additional locations and trying to work around that. But I'd say within the last 2 years, we've invested heavily in the Google products and features. And so one of the things that we built that kind of piggybacks on that intelligent review routing is, so now you can have one Nearby Now account, as long as it's within the same business line, one Nearby Now account. And we give you for free, part of your subscription, 3 Google business locations that you can connect. So when you send out a review request, and so let's say that you operate in San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. I know that's pretty broad, but
yeah,
just to make visualizing it simple. And you have a check-in, and that check-in is in Waco. And so you've got your technicians that, maybe your office is kind of like North Austin. And so you've got part of your technicians are kind of south of Waco, north of Austin. Your other business is kind of where you're at, North Dallas.
Yeah.
And so that Waco check-in, you actually want that review to be routed to the Austin location, because technically it's closer. I know in reality it's not, but let's say it's 50 miles to one and 75 to the other. But the customer, you don't want the customer to choose that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want the customer to just go to the proper Google location. So we built in we call it spot on. And so, we use a little bit of geometry and math to figure out, okay, here's where the customer is and here's where the Google locations are. So route, when we're sending the customer to Google's review form, send it to the closest in proximity. And not just on a slight curve, curvature of the earth, not just on a straight line, but, because we run into this problem a lot where I think in our example, we show the San Francisco area where you might have 3 locations, and a customer might be physically closer, but there's a bay in between the location and the customer. And so that location doesn't actually service that customer. A one that's further away does, because there's no body of water in between them. So same concept. So, and then you have the ability to override it, and you could say, okay, so in general, route my customers to the closest proximity Google location, except, oh man, where's that meat church guy? What's that city called? Waxahachie or something like that?
Yeah, Waxahachie, yeah.
Except Waxahachie, I want that to go to the North Dallas Google location. So you can add city overrides. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So super cool, because otherwise, if you aren't using, we call it proximity routing, spot on. If you're not using that, then you have to either, the way we used to do it was, well, where do you want Google reviews? If you have 200 over here and 50 over here and you want to increase that, make them all go there. But, what is that doing? I don't know. If Google is seeing customers from Austin review a HVAC company in Dallas, is that tripping any red flags? I'm not sure.
Well, but also the recency thing we talked about. Like if you moved all of them to one location and the other one gets abandoned,
right. So instead of
best of our knowledge, we think
instead of round robbing your Google locations, which I feel bad that we went so long doing that. The solution now is load them all in and let the proximity system work for you. But in the areas where, you have specific cities that you don't route to the closest physical location, override it. And oh man, it's been huge. Customers love that. All right, one more for you. The other thing is, so as you can imagine, over the years, we've got millions and millions and millions of photos, right? And so if you think about kind of your position and my position, it's like continuous education for the customers. We're always trying to teach the customer how to do things in the best possible way to maximize the results. For example, telling your customers you got to be doing check-ins even if the technicians don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been along the lines with that automation on how can I help technicians check in and eliminate any barriers. One of the things that we're currently developing is it's like in the industry it's called image object detection. So if you're an HVAC company and you've got 50 trucks and they're all doing check-ins every day and they're posting pictures, and Dave decides, and this is a true story, Dave decides to take his shirt off and put a cowboy hat on and take a picture of himself next to an HVAC system because he thinks it's funny. Okay. Does that help your business? No, right? So, we're building in like object detection so we can say the goal would be to do certain things like if a photo contains an address marker or a customer's license plate on a car, detect that. And in those two examples, blur it out. But I'm calling the other thing like selfie detection. So if Dave's out there taking pictures of himself with a cowboy hat on and no shirt, that I want to bubble that up to the admin users in the agency. It's like an educational tool, like, hey, haha, funny picture, but yeah, don't do that.
Right.
So trying to leverage.
That's similar to TikTok does that. We'll take you can take a picture by a big landmark or something in that city. And, TikTok won't say it, but like we've ran the test on it, and you go to the Bay Bridge in San Francisco and you take a picture, like it's going to attract a lot more views because they're going to show it to people that have either been to that same bridge or live in that area, something along those lines. So I think that's super cool to be able to, like you said, the license plate or something like that, like give that more relevance and let it make more of an impact.
Yeah. And we're just kind of getting started with this. We've got a lot more that I'm not ready to talk about, but definitely big future in utilizing AI and machine learning. And I mean, most of the stuff isn't new. What is new is cloud computing, computer processing power, the ability to take massive, gargantuan amounts of data and sift through it quickly. And that's why we're seeing this AI revolution. Basically, is
right.
The cost of doing all this is. I mean, I'll tell you right now, using something like Amazon SageMaker, I could probably process, let's say, 10 million photos, and run build a model with it and run and pluck out, maybe like give me all the water heaters out of these 10,000 images for free or next to free. I mean, that's how far we've come. Before we quit back in 2010-ish, we had just started getting into cloud computing. Prior to that, like 2007, 8-ish, we would buy a server that would cost $100,000. And the servers, they have a lifespan, right? They're only good for a few years, just like any computer. They kind of degrade over time. And so, you would need to process this amount of data, $100,000, $300,000 machine that could handle it, right? And so here's what's changed is now we have cloud computing. And so now you've got these supercomputers that are 100 times that size, but you can virtualize them and you can partition them out. And so I can say, hey, I've got 10 million photos. They're in this Amazon S3 bucket. Scan them all. Look for a water heater, and I can basically rent or borrow the compute time needed for that, and then return it. And so I'm taking one of these servers from Amazon's cloud compute. It's probably $1 million server. I can borrow it. I can borrow its resources for a few minutes, and I would use so little of it that Amazon has all these free tiers. I probably might not exceed it. Now you're going to exceed it if this is like a daily thing, but it on $100,000 computer, I might only need $400 worth of compute power a month on it.
Right.
That's what's changed, and that's why we're able to do so much more than we ever could before with machine learning and AI, is because the cost is gone to nearly zero to do it all.
But what will be the real cost when it's all said and done? We won't know, right?
I've got theories.
All right, so look, we're gonna wrap up this show with our rapid fire questions. I'm gonna throw out a series of questions, and you just give me the first answer that pops in the head. Ready?
Jessica Alba. What?
All right. Childhood hero.
Oh, childhood hero. Barry Bonds.
Your first job.
First job, I was a lifeguard.
Nice. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
On a catamaran in any ocean.
Indian Ocean or any ocean?
Any ocean. Traveling the world in a catamaran.
All right, nice. If you could sit down with one historical figure, who would it be?
Donald Trump.
Love it. Morning or night person?
Changed with age.
I agree with you there. Yeah. Coincidence or fate?
Oh, I don't believe in coincidence.
Beach or mountains?
Beach in the summer, mountains in the winter.
Sunrise or sunset?
I like sunsets.
All right. That was Rapid Fire with Billy Cooper. Billy, I appreciate you being here. It's probably one of the longest podcasts we've done. Just enjoyed the time with you, and looking forward to our audience to hear this and hear some of the things you guys have coming out, and would love to have you back in the future.
Yeah, let's do it again. I'd like to dig into that AI stuff a bit, and especially because on this group that we're both a part of, it seems to be a pretty big concern for a lot of folks. And I'll be honest, I got some good news and some bad news for those people that are concerned, and so I think it might be good for them to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll put a webinar together and figure out how to make it work. Well, man, I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.